Please give a warm TEDxHoodCollege welcome to Geoffrey Seidel.
Thanks. Good evening. Welcome to our TEDx talk, and thank you, Dr. Littlefield, for putting this together. My name is Geoff Seidel, and I've been a registered nurse now for over 45 years. And I've done everything from critical care to emergency care to oncology to clinical trials research with the National Cancer Institute. I work for Leidos Biomedical Research and the Frederick National Lab. Been with them for over 21 years. And I need to just say that everything I say here is based on my experience. I'm not representing anybody. I'm not representing the federal government. I'm representing myself and my experience of working with patients, and I love my patients. So a note, a disclaimer, another disclaimer is that what we're going to talk about could be sensitive to some people in the audience. We're going to talk about cancer. We're going to talk about loss. We're going to talk about relationships. And you're going to have an assignment at the end. Okay? So that's my disclaimer. Come join me. So this is a discussion that could take place in a physician's office, in a clinic. And first thing I want you to do is pull out a piece of paper or pull out your phone. Don't turn it on. Don't turn the volume off. Please don't turn the volume off. But pull out this piece of paper, and I want you to write down 6 things. Okay? Come join me. So the first 2 items are 2 things that you like to do, activities, hobbies, whatever it might be. The next 2 things are 2 people that are very important to you, very valuable to you in your life. So you should have 4 things now. And the last 2 is 2 possessions that you have that you couldn't live without. Sometimes physical things, house, boat, airplanes, whatever it might be. So keep that list handy, okay? So I want you to look at me. This is a hard message to share with you, but it's important you hear everything that I say. The colonoscopy that you had about 2 weeks ago, we did that biopsy. We found a polyp. We found a tumor in your colon. And the pathology report came back that it is actually what's called an adenocarcinoma. It's a type of cancer. And we did the PET CT, and the PET CT showed that, remember that scan that you went into? It showed that there were what we call metastases to the liver. So this tumor has grown outside of the colon and has spread to your liver. Adenocarcinoma has a marker, a tumor marker called CEA. And what we do when we draw that lab work on you, we've got a baseline CEA level, and your CEA is already elevated. That tells us that you're in trouble. And you have a cancer diagnosis. The even harder news to hear is that there's about a 14% survival rate at 5 years. 14%. So essentially, 9 chances out of 10 in 5 years, this cancer will take your life. Did you hear anything I said after I said the word cancer? Or did the screen kind of go blank at that point in time? Give you some time to reflect. What are you thinking about right now? What's going through your mind? So what do you do with this information now that you have it? the great researcher, Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who from 1969, you're shaking your head, did the seminal research on grief. And you remember those 5 stages of grief? That research was done back on terminal patients, and since that time, that research has spread across the board so that those 5 stages of grief really apply for a job loss, a pet loss, any type of loss. You go through those 5 stages of grief. First stage of grief is denial. Well, those scans, that was somebody else's scan. That's not my name on there. That lab work, that CEA, that's not mine. You know, that's lab error. Yes, I read about lab error in Reader's Digest. It's not lab error. Or it is lab error. It can't be me. It just, no, I'm not going to, I can't have a cancer diagnosis. The next phase of the grief process is anger. I don't have cancer. There's no way I have cancer. I don't have time for this. I have too much to do. The next phase is bargaining. This is where the patient and the family might have their conversations with their Lord and say, God, you see what's happening here? Is this really that I'm supposed to go through this? I'll tell you what. If you let me survive this, I will fill in the blank. If you let me survive this, then I can do this, and then this will happen, and so that bargaining. Next phase is depression. At that point, we go into what we might call a funk. Okay? We want to be left alone. We don't want to talk to people. Don't bother me. Don't call me. Don't text me. Don't Instagram me. Okay? Just that deep, deep depression. And then finally, we get to the point of acceptance. Okay, I'm stuck with this. This is a diagnosis. Let's work through this. We have options. Let's move on. The interesting thing about Kubler-Ross's research is that you have to go through all 5 of those steps. If you miss one or go through one too quickly, it'll call you back before you get to that acceptance. So remember that as we continue. So that list that you have 6 items on it. Scratch off 2. Okay? Just scratch off 2 that you go, they're not quite as important as these other 4. So you actually be down to 4 items in that list. So what are my options right now? I'm back in the clinic, can you tell? What are my options right now? Okay, we'll talk about your options. You can do nothing. You can say, I'm just going to let bygones be bygones, and we'll just see what happens. I don't want to be poked. I don't want to be prodded. I don't want to be subjected to surgery or chemotherapy. I'm just going to push through this, and that's an okay option. It's your option. Next option is what's called standard of care. The good news is that we do have several effective standards of care for treating colorectal cancer. It's metastatic stage 4 cancer. The bad news is we can't cure it. We can't cure it. Another option is clinical trials. I'm a fan of clinical trials. That's where most of my practice is now. And if you are interested in clinical trials, you can go to clinicaltrials.gov. That website is an NIH-sponsored website that you can get access to all types of clinical trials of any disease, not just cancer. And we're doing great work in clinical trials. We're finding out new things. We are fearfully and wonderfully made, and the more we learn about ourselves, the more we need to learn about ourselves. So it's a work in process. The other option is a combination of those. You might say, well, let's try this as a standard of care, and then we'll go to clinical trials. The other interesting thing about clinical trials is that there's newer clinical trials where if the patient is what's called chemo-naive and surgically naive, in other words, they haven't seen any chemotherapy or haven't seen any surgery, that they can enroll in this clinical trial. It's novel research, but there's some potential. So you have options. What we hear from patients at times like this is the patients say, you know, I just want to walk my daughter down the aisle. I just want to see my granddaughter graduate from kindergarten. I just want to, whatever it might be. So welcome back. It's been 3 months now since you were here. How have you been feeling? Okay. Been a little harder. Yeah, the scans, the scan report that came back essentially showed that the disease has now spread to your brain and outside your colon into the peritoneum. Your CEA has more than doubled. The tumor size has more than doubled in the 3 months since we've seen you last. Hard choices coming up. What we've tried has not been effective, and we have some decisions to make. There's some directions to take that it's going to be hard. It's going to get harder before this ends. So I just want to make you aware of that. So pull out your list. You had 2 items that you took off. You should have 4. Cross off another 2. You should be down to 2 items. It's getting a little harder. These are losses that will occur during this time. Right now, you have a little bit of control over them. Right now. How we doing? You with me? You feeling it? This is hard. This is hard for providers and caregivers too. So welcome back to visit number 3. I wish I'd have better news, but the cancer continues to spread. Your CEA has doubled again, and there's really nothing more we can do right now. It's time to get things in order for your life. You might have 1 month to live. 1 month. Have you talked with your family about your wishes? Do you have an advanced directive? You might want to think about getting your financial affairs in order. Do you have a power of attorney for health care? Somebody that can speak for you and say, he wouldn't want this. He told me he didn't want this, and here it is in writing. You need to get those in order. You might need to think about palliative care, which is care that will keep you comfortable in the end, or hospice care. Hospice care is a great option because the focus is on comfort. And you can get it right in your home. So you have options. That's the good news. You feeling this wrestling match that this patient, this family is going through? You get it? So pull out your list. I want you to cross off the top one because you've lost control. You can't make decisions anymore. Fate or God, whatever you want to say, is making this decision now. Just cross off the top one of your list, so there should be one left. Probably that last one on the list is a name. If it's not a name, it's probably the second to last one was a name. Okay? Your assignment, should you decide to accept it, is within the next 24 to 48 hours, you contact that person and you tell them how important they are in your life. That if you were to get to this point in your life, you've exhausted all the options, the physician is saying you have 4 weeks to live, who do you want to see? Who do you want to talk to? Who do you want to hear from? And there might have been other people on this list. You might have six people's names. You might have 15 people's names that you could put on this list. Your assignment is to reach out to each one of them and say, this old nurse made me do this. Blame me. Tell them how important they are in your life. Bless them by letting them know now how important they are in your life. I challenge you to do that. I hope you have a slightly different new perspective on coming events, potentially for many of us. Thanks so much for listening.